Avoidant behavior is driven by fear. This is a person that is very afraid. Fear is one of the most powerful human emotions, but it's also one of the most irrational. These fears lead to a deeply rooted fear of emotional closeness, emotional intimacy. Because of their childhood, an avoidant learned to associate emotional closeness with abandonment. If they let someone in their heart, they're going to get rejected and abandoned. They also fear communication because that leads to abandonment and rejection too. There are 3 core fears at the heart of avoidant behavior. These are the fears. First is the fear of engulfment. This is the fear of losing themselves in a relationship, losing their autonomy, losing their independence. The reason they fear this so much is that they fear that they will lose their independence, they will lose their autonomy to a person that is ultimately going to abandon them and is going to reject them. Then they'll have lost their ability to fend for themselves and they'll essentially be heartbroken and splat. Their life will essentially be crushed. This is a person that has placed an unusual emphasis on independence. A healthy adult should be an independent person, but the focus that an avoidant puts on it is unhealthy because this person as a child learned that they can only rely on themselves for their emotional needs. So they learn to be hyper independent. This carries through to being an adult. Now, this independence can also drive them to do things like becoming a workaholic, always being busy, trying to distract themselves through things like their work so they don't have to self-reflect and process emotions, because that's what avoidants do. They avoid dealing with things that they don't like painful emotions. So staying an independent person, which means keeping everybody else at an emotional arm's length, is one way that they protect themselves because losing their independence is one of their core fears. The second big fear that an avoidant has is rejection. They really fear being rejected. This is because their feelings were often dismissed as a child. If they expressed sadness, if they expressed emotion, they were shot down, often shot down brutally. The message was sent, your feelings, child, are not welcome here. So they learned to stuff it up and bottle it up. This is why avoidants struggle to communicate. In relationships, they generally do not communicate their wants and needs to their partner. This is because they fear expressing themselves, because in their mind, if they express themselves, they're going to get rejected. At their core, an avoidant is a person with very low self-esteem, and rejection is taken so incredibly personally. They go into a paralyzing fear, essentially a paralysis, even at the thought of communicating something to another person. Communicating their wants, communicating their needs scares them to their core. Of course, they could choose to communicate, but they cater to the fears and they choose not to communicate. So they fear rejection in a very severe way because rejection leads to abandonment and it confirms their preconceived notion that they are not lovable, that they're not desirable, that nobody wants them and nobody cares about them. And the top avoidant fear, this is a very subconscious fear that they're often not even aware of consciously, is the fear of abandonment. All the other fears that the avoidant has tie into the fear of abandonment. This is a person that was emotionally abandoned as a child. Their parents or their caretakers were not there for them in the way they needed. They were not emotionally nurtured. So they learned that the people you're supposed to rely on for your emotional needs are going to reject you. They're going to abandon you. So emotional closeness is a very scary thing because if you let anybody into your heart, this person is going to figure out that you are unlovable, they're going to reject, and they're going to abandon you. This is the same reason why many avoidants will fear commitment labels, because commitment implies emotional availability, which means emotional closeness, which therefore means abandonment. And they especially fear abandonment by a partner that treats them well, a loving partner, a partner that is emotionally available, a partner that treats them with kindness. This is why they run from loving partners and they don't have a problem committing to a partner that is somewhat toxic, because the toxic person doesn't trigger their fears of abandonment. The toxic person is also emotionally unavailable. So there's no threat of emotional intimacy there. The avoidant doesn't have to be vulnerable for this person. Plus, it's not so scary to get abandoned by somebody who's not all that special, by someone who's somewhat toxic. But it's very scary to get abandoned by somebody who's loving, that the avoidant lets into their heart. So anybody that the avoidant starts to have real feelings for is going to get pushed away. It all ties into the fear of abandonment. Rejection leads to abandonment, engulfment leads to abandonment, emotional intimacy leads to abandonment, commitment leads to abandonment, and communication leads to abandonment. It all comes in to the fear of abandonment. The avoidant feels that it would be safer to be the one doing the abandoning than to risk being abandoned themselves. Now keep in mind, when they do abandon a partner, they are really so wrapped up in their own fears and their own feelings that they are failing to consider how this devastates the other person. They're only thinking of themselves. A person who is severely insecure can become quite selfish and self-absorbed. Fear has the power to make a very selfish person. Now, we can have empathy for all these fears. They are very afraid people. However, they still have choices. They have free will. They're grown adults. They could choose to heal themselves and to communicate to partners and to not run away. So we can have empathy, but also understand that this person is making choices. And sometimes those are very selfish, hurtful choices.